The credit card terminal let out a sharp, jagged beep. Declined. The sound was loud enough to echo in the sterile hallway. It felt like a slap. I stared at the little gray machine, praying it was a mistake. Praying the magnetic strip was just dirty. But the red light didn't blink. It glared. "I'm sorry, Miss Brown," the nurse said. Her voice was soft, wrapped in that professional pity I had grown to hate. "The transaction didn't go through. Do you have another card?" I didn't have another card. I didn't have $5, let alone the deposit for emergency vascular surgery. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A single heavy buzz against my hip. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The vibration felt like a warning shot. I pulled it out anyway. The screen was cracked, spiderwebbing across the text message notification. "King, Daddy takes the fall." I swallowed, but my throat was full of dust. King was watching. He wasn't here, but he was always here. He knew my father was in pre-op. He knew I was standing at the intake desk. He probably knew exactly how much money was in my empty bank account. "Please," I whispered. My hands were shaking so bad I had to grip the edge of the counter. "Just run it one more time." The bank said the transfer would clear by noon. The nurse sighed. She looked over my shoulder at the gurney parked against the wall. My father, Thomas, lay there. He was pale. Gray, actually. The stark fluorescent lights washed every bit of life out of his skin. His leg was elevated, wrapped in thick bandages that were already spotting with fresh blood. King had done that. A swing of a bat, a sickening crack, and a warning that next time, it would be my skull. "We can't wait until noon, Amara," the nurse said gently. "The surgeon is ready now. If we don't restore blood flow within the hour, we're looking at amputation. Or sepsis." My stomach turned over. Amputation. My father was a carpenter. His hands and his legs were his life. If he lost his leg, he lost his dignity. And it was my fault. All of it. Another vibration. "King, beg, all you want. Nobody saves you." Tears burned the corners of my eyes, hot and humiliating. I looked at the orderly standing by the gurney. He had his hand on the brake release. He was waiting for the signal to wheel my father out of the surgical queue and down to the county holding ward. The place where people went to wait. The place where people went to die. "Wait," I said. My voice cracked. "Just 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes to call someone." I didn't have anyone to call. I just needed the world to stop spinning. I looked down at my phone again to delete the text, my thumb hovering over the screen. As I moved, the sleeve of my oversized hoodie slid up. It exposed my forearm. The skin was mottled with purple and green. Finger marks. King's grip from 2 nights ago, branded into my flesh. I yanked the sleeve down instantly. Then, the air in the hospital changed. It wasn't a sound. It was the absence of sound. The chaotic noise of the ER. The phones ringing. The distant sirens. The squeak of rubber soles. Just evaporated. A heavy, suffocating silence rolled through the automatic double doors at the entrance. I turned my head. 3 men walked in. They moved in a V formation, cutting through the stagnant hospital air like sharks in open water. They wore suits that cost more than my father's house. But it wasn't the clothes. It was the way they walked. They didn't rush. They didn't yield. The man at the front was Lee Jong-nam. I stopped breathing. Everyone in the city knew his face. He owned the shipping yards. He owned the nightclubs. And according to the whispers in the neighborhood, he owned the police precinct too. He was beautiful in a terrifying, sculptural way. High cheekbones, cold eyes, and a mouth that looked like it had never smiled. He wasn't looking at me. He was walking toward the hospital administrator's office, his gaze fixed on the frosted glass door ahead. He looked bored, detached, like being here was an insult to his time. I pressed my back against the intake counter, trying to make myself small, trying to disappear. I was nobody. Just a waitress who owed money to a street thug. Men like Lee Jong-nam didn't notice women like me. He walked past the desk. His cologne hit me, sandalwood, smoke, and cold rain. Then, he stopped. It was unnatural. He went from motion to absolute stillness in a microsecond. He didn't turn his body. He just turned his head. His eyes found me. They were dark. Endless. They swept over my face, taking in the sweat on my hairline, the terror in my eyes. Then, his gaze dropped. It landed on my arm. My sleeve had slipped again. The ugly purple bruise was exposed under the harsh lights. His eyes narrowed, a fraction of an inch. Then he looked at my hand. My phone was still lit up. King's message was glowing on the screen. Daddy takes the fall. Lee read it. I saw his eyes track the text. He read the threat. He read my fear. The orderly by the gurney cleared his throat. He hadn't noticed the shift in the room. He just wanted to do his job. "I'm sorry, miss," the orderly said loud enough to break the silence. "We have to clear the bay. Protocol." The orderly kicked the brake release on the gurney. Clack. He started to pull my father backward, away from the operating doors. "No." I surged forward, grabbing the metal rail. "Please, don't take him." The orderly pushed me back gently but firmly. My father groaned in his sleep. Then Lee Jongnam moved. He didn't shout, he didn't lunge, he simply raised his right hand. He held up one finger. The motion was lazy, elegant, and absolutely terrifying. The effect was instant. The hospital administrator, a balding man who had just run out of his office to greet the VIP, froze in his tracks. The security guard by the door straightened his spine. The nurse at the desk stopped typing. The orderly looked up. He saw Lee. He saw the finger raised in the air. The orderly let go of the gurney as if the metal had turned white hot. He stepped back, hands raised, retreating into the shadows. My father's gurney stopped moving. Lee lowered his hand. He didn't look at the staff. He didn't look at the administrator who was now trembling. He looked only at me. He tilted his head to the side, examining me like a puzzle he had just decided to solve. He made a small motion with his chin toward the nurse behind the desk. One of the men behind Lee stepped forward. He placed a black card on the counter. It was heavy. Metal. "Priority override," the man said. His voice was flat. "Full surgical package. Private recovery suite. Indefinite stay." The nurse stared at the card. Her hands shook as she picked it up. She swiped it. Beep. Green light. Approved. "Prep the patient," the nurse stammered, her voice an octave higher than before. "Get him into Theater 1. Now. Move." The team swarmed my father. This time they were pushing him toward the double doors, toward safety, toward life. I stood frozen in the wake of the activity. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked up. Lee Jongnam was already walking away. He moved toward the elevator bank, his entourage flanking him. But just before the steel doors closed, he turned back. He caught my gaze through the glass. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were possessive, heavy. He didn't nod. He just stared until the doors slid shut, sealing him away. My phone buzzed again. King. But the fear didn't hit me the same way. It was replaced by something colder. Something heavier. I touched the bruise on my arm. The debt was gone. But as I stared into the dark eyes of the city's most dangerous man, I knew with sinking certainty I had just been bought. Welcome back, my dangerous dreamers. We are in that strange, quiet window between Christmas and the New Year. It is the time when we look at our lives. We decide what to leave behind in the past, and what we are brave enough to carry into the future. This story is about that exact choice. Amara just sold her freedom for a new beginning. She is about to learn that sometimes salvation looks a lot like danger. Before we see the Silent King collect his debt, do me a favor. Make sure you are subscribed and hit that like button. Since we are heading into a new year, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what is the one thing you are leaving behind this year? I read every single comment. I love seeing our dark romance family grow across the world. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights. Let's go back to the diner. The rain lashed against the plate glass window of the diner. It came down in sheets, blurring the neon lights of the city outside into smeared streaks of red and blue. Inside, the air smelled like stale coffee, wet wool, and old grease. I wiped the counter. Circular motions. Wax on, wax off. My arm ached. The bruise hidden under my uniform sleeve throbbed in time with my heartbeat, a dull, heavy reminder of the hospital. But my father was in a private room. He had a vascular surgeon with 3 degrees monitoring his pulse, He was safe. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 200 am. The graveyard shift. The diner was mostly empty. Just a trucker nursing a pie in the corner, and him. I tried not to look at booth 4, the booth in the far back. The shadows clung to that corner like spiderwebs. Lee Jongnam had been sitting there for 3 hours. He hadn't ordered food. He hadn't looked at his phone. He had ordered a single cup of black coffee, and he hadn't taken a sip. He just sat there. His suit was immaculate, a sharp charcoal gray that looked out of place against the cracked red vinyl of the booth seats. He was watching me. He didn't try to hide it. Every time I filled a sugar shaker, every time I poured a refill, I felt his gaze. It was a physical weight, pressing between my shoulder blades. He was a predator waiting by the watering hole, silent, still, terrifying. I went back to the coffee pot. My hands were steady, but my nerves were fraying. Why was he here? He had paid the debt. He had bought the surgery. Why wasn't he sending a bill? Why was he sitting in a greasy spoon diner in the middle of a thunderstorm? The brass bell above the entrance door jingled violently. A gust of wind swept rain into the entryway. Then came the heavy, wet squeak of boots on linoleum. I froze. I knew those boots. King Davis stood in the doorway. He was soaking wet. Water dripped from his shaved head, running down his neck into the collar of his leather jacket. He looked wild. His eyes were bloodshot, swimming with booze and rage. He scanned the room. When he saw me, his lip curled. "There she is," King slurred. His voice was too loud for the quiet room, the million-dollar wife. My stomach dropped to the floor. I gripped the coffee pot handle tighter. "King, please, not here." He stumbled forward. He reeked of whiskey and ozone. "Not here? You think you're too good for me now? You think because you got some sugar daddy to bail out your old man, you're high class?" The trucker in the corner looked up, then quickly looked back down at his pie. Nobody intervened when King Davis was in a mood. "Go home, King," I said, keeping my voice low. "You're drunk. I'm not drunk." He roared. He slammed his hand onto the counter. The silverware rattled. I went to the hospital. I went to remind your daddy who owns him. And what do they tell me? They tell me the bill is paid. Cleared. Priority status. He leaned over the counter. His face was inches from mine. I could smell the rot on his breath. "Who did you sleep with, Amara?" He hissed. "Who did you sell yourself to? That money doesn't fall out of the sky. You're a whore. You've always been a whore." "I didn't sleep with anyone," I said, stepping back. My back hit the rear counter. I was trapped. "Liar." King lunged. He didn't bother walking around the counter. He reached over it. His hand, thick and calloused, clamped onto my upper arm. His fingers dug exactly into the bruise he had left days ago. Fresh pain exploded up my shoulder. I gasped, dropping the coffee pot. It shattered on the floor. Hot liquid splashed my legs, but the pain in my arm drowned it out. "Let go," I screamed. "You think you can embarrass me?" King shouted, dragging me forward. My ribs slammed against the counter edge. "You think you can go behind my back? I own you. I own your father. I own every breath you take." He raised his other hand. It was balled into a fist. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the impact. I waited for the crack of bone. It never came. Instead, there was a whoosh of air, a blur of motion. Then, a sickening sound. Snap. It sounded like a dry branch stepping on a winter hike. Crisp. Loud. Final. King screamed. It was a high guttural shriek that tore through the diner. The pressure on my arm vanished instantly. I opened my eyes. King was on his knees. He was contorted, twisted at an impossible angle. Lee Jongnam was standing over him. I hadn't heard him move. I hadn't seen him leave the booth. He was just there. Lee was holding King's right hand. But he wasn't holding it like a handshake. He had King's wrist in a vice grip with one hand, and with the other he had bent King's index finger all the way back. It was touching the top of King's wrist. The finger was broken. Completely. The diner went dead silent. The rain outside seemed to stop. The only sound was King's ragged, choking gasps. Lee didn't look angry. He didn't look exertive. He looked like he was inspecting a piece of rotten fruit. His face was blank, his eyes devoid of any human empathy. "My coffee," Lee said softly. His voice was smooth, a low baritone that vibrated in the floorboards. "You disturbed it. My hand. You broke my hand," King wailed, trying to pull away. Lee tightened his grip. King's knees buckled further, his forehead smashing against the dirty linoleum. Lee looked down at the sobbing man. Then he looked at me. His eyes dropped to my arm, where King's wet handprint was still visible on my uniform. He looked back at King. "Is this the hand?" Lee asked. He wasn't asking me. He was asking King. "What?" King wheezed. "Is this the hand that touched her?" Lee repeated. The question was casual, academic. I don't... Lee applied a fraction more pressure. "Yes, yes," King screamed. "Let go. Please." Lee nodded. Once. He released King's hand abruptly, as if he had grown bored. King collapsed sideways, cradling his shattered finger against his chest, curling into a fetal ball of misery. Two men in dark suits materialized from the entryway. Lee's shadows. They didn't speak. They simply bent down, grabbed King by the armpits, and dragged him backward. King's boots squeaked against the floor as he was hauled out into the rain like a bag of trash. The door swung shut. The bell jingled. Then, silence. Lee stood in the middle of the diner. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. It was white silk, pristine and folded into a perfect square. He unfolded it slowly. He began to wipe his right hand. He wiped the palm. He wiped each finger. He wiped the space between his thumb and forefinger. He scrubbed the skin as if King's touch had left a visible stain of filth. He didn't look at me while he did it. He focused entirely on the sanitation of his own hand. I couldn't move. My heart was hammering against my throat. I was terrified of King, but this was different. This was a monster who wore a suit and broke bones without blinking. Lee finished cleaning his hands. He dropped the silk handkerchief onto the floor. It landed in a puddle of spilled coffee. He stepped over it. He walked to the counter. He stopped right in front of me. The counter was the only thing separating us, and suddenly, it felt very thin. He reached out. I flinched. He paused. His hand hovered near my face. He didn't touch me. He just tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my skin. They were cold. "Shift is over," Lee said. It wasn't a suggestion. He turned and walked toward the door. He pushed it open, letting the cold wind rush back in. He didn't look back to see if I was following. He knew I would. "Get in the car." The door of the Maybach clicked shut. Instantly, the world disappeared. The drumming of the rain, the distant wail of sirens, the ragged breathing of the city, it was all severed. Inside, the silence was absolute. It was pressurized. It felt like being submerged in deep water. The air smelled of expensive leather and conditioned oxygen. The seats were heated. The windows were tinted so dark that the streetlights outside were just passing ghosts. I sat pressed against the door, my hand still gripping the handle. I was wet, shivering, and smelled like diner grease. Lee Jong-nam sat on the other side of the wide leather bench. He was dry. He was calm. He was looking at a tablet, his finger scrolling through a document with rhythmic precision. He didn't look at me. $150,000, Lee said. He didn't look up. He spoke to the air. "That is the cost of your father's surgery," he continued, plus another 30 for the private room, 10 for the security detail outside his door. I swallowed hard. The numbers made my head spin. "I'll pay you back," I said. My voice sounded small in the acoustic perfection of the car. "I'll work double shifts. I'll sell the house. It might take time, but..." Lee stopped scrolling. He finally turned his head. "You make $12 an hour, Amara," he said. "The interest alone would outpace your lifespan. You will never pay me back. Not in this lifetime." "Then why did you do it?" I demanded, finding a spark of anger in my fear. Why walk into that hospital? Why break a man's hand in my diner? Lee set the tablet down on the center console. He turned his body fully toward me. My grandfather is the chairman of the Gumrian Group, Lee said. He is old, he is traditional, and he is dying. His will stipulates that the heir to the chairman's seat must be a family man. Settled. Married. He checked his watch. A platinum piece that probably cost more than my entire neighborhood. I turn 35 next Tuesday. If I am not married by midnight on my birthday, the board votes to bypass me. I lose the company. I stared at him. You need a wife? I need a contract, he corrected. So go find one, I snapped. You're rich. You. I waved a hand at him. There must be a line of debutantes waiting to marry you. There are, Lee said cold. Hundreds. Korean heiresses with perfect pedigrees, perfect manners, and powerful fathers. Then pick one. No. Lee leaned forward. The space between us shrank. The air grew heavy. I don't want to please my family, Amara. I want to punish them. His eyes drifted over me. They catalogued everything. My dark skin, my frizzy hair damp from the rain, my cheap uniform, the scuff marks on my shoes. You are the nightmare, he said softly. You are black. You are poor. You are a divorced waitress with a criminal ex-husband and a bankrupt father. Bringing you home, introducing you as the matriarch of the Gumriang Syndicate, it will be a nuclear bomb at the dinner table. I felt the blood rush to my face. It was humiliation, hot and sharp. He wasn't saving me. He was weaponizing me. I am not a prop, I hissed. And I am not a joke to be played on your racist grandfather. I turned and yanked the door handle. It didn't budge. Child lock. Let me out, I said, pounding on the leather panel. Unlock the door. You can leave, Lee said. He didn't move to stop me. But before you go, you should see the weather report. He picked up the tablet again. He tapped the screen and slid it across the leather seat toward me. I looked down. It wasn't a weather report. It was a video feed. Night vision. Green and grainy. It showed a small, run-down house. My father's house. In the bottom corner of the frame, a timestamp counted up. The seconds were ticking in real time. A figure walked into the frame. He was limping, holding his right hand against his chest, the hand Lee had broken just 20 minutes ago. But with his good left hand, he was dragging something. A red plastic jerry can. I stopped breathing. It was King. He was splashing liquid onto the wooden porch of my father's house. He was dousing the front door. He was stumbling, crying, drunk and broken, but he was pouring gasoline. He is escalating, Lee said. His voice was devoid of emotion. Humiliation makes men like him dangerous. He feels small, so he wants to burn something down to feel big again. Call the police. I screamed at the tablet. He's going to burn the house. My dad's things are in there. The police will take 10 minutes to arrive, Lee said. Fire takes 3 minutes to consume a wooden structure of that age. Do something. I begged. I looked at Lee. Stop him. I can stop him, Lee said. I can make a call. My men are already there. Watching. Waiting. He held up a hand. But I don't work for free. And I don't do charity. He looked at me. The predator trap snapped shut. The deal, Lee said clearly. You marry me. 1 year. You live in my penthouse. You play the part of the devoted wife. You attend every dinner, every gala, every board meeting. And King? I whispered. King goes away. Away? Permanently, Lee said. He will never touch you again. He will never look at your father again. He will simply cease to be a problem. I looked back at the tablet. On the screen, King was fumbling with a lighter. The flame flickered in the darkness. You have 5 seconds, Lee said, to decide if you want to be a widow or a wife. He's my ex-husband, I stammered. He is a dead man walking, Lee corrected. The only question is whether he takes your father's house with him. Lee tapped the tablet screen. The video minimized. A document appeared. A digital contract. Sign, Lee commanded. And the lighter goes out. My hand shook. I looked at the contract. I didn't read the words. I couldn't. The letters were swimming. If I sign this, I said, my voice trembling, I belong to you. Yes, Lee said. You do. I can't see my dad? Not until the year is up. It's too dangerous. You are mine now, exclusively. On the screen, the flame in King's hand grew brighter. He was bringing it down toward the gasoline-soaked wood. 3 seconds, Lee said. I didn't think. Instinct took the wheel. I reached out. My finger hit the tablet. I scribbled a jagged line across the signature box. Done. Lee took the tablet back immediately. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He tapped the screen once. Execute, he whispered. On the video feed, 2 shadows detached themselves from the darkness of the yard. They moved faster than King. One of them tackled him before the lighter hit the wood. The feed cut to black instantly. It is handled, Lee said. He slipped the tablet into his briefcase. He tapped the partition glass that separated us from the driver. Home, Lee said to the driver. The engine purred. The car began to move, gliding forward like a ship launching into the dark ocean. I sat back against the door, pulling my knees to my chest. The adrenaline crashed, leaving me cold and hollow. Stop shaking, Lee said. He didn't look at me. He was already reading another document. It makes you look weak. And my wife is not weak. I looked out the window as the city blurred past. The debt was gone. The fire was out. But as the skyline of the city tilted and we began the ascent toward the wealthy district, I realized the truth. I hadn't escaped the fire. I had just agreed to live in it. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper. There was no hallway. There was no foyer. There was just space. I stepped out onto floor-to-ceiling marble. It was white, veined with gray and polished to a mirror shine so perfect I could see the scuff marks on my sneakers reflected in it. The penthouse didn't look like a home. It looked like a mausoleum for a pharaoh who hated color. Everything was glass, steel, or black leather. The walls were windows, exposing the entire city of Seoul sprawled out 70 floors below. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Your room is the second door on the left, Lee said. He walked past me without stopping. He didn't offer to take my bag. Do not enter the east wing. That is my workspace. Is there a kitchen? I asked. I'm thirsty. The staff will attend to you, he said. He didn't turn around. And Amara? Yes, take off your shoes. You are scratching the floor. He disappeared down the hall. I looked down at my worn-out sneakers. Then I looked at the pristine white expanse. I kicked them off. The marble was freezing against my socks. My room was huge. It was bigger than the entire apartment I shared with my dad. But it was empty. A king-sized bed with white sheets. A single black dresser. No pictures. No warmth. I opened my battered suitcase on the bed. It looked pathetic here. My faded jeans, my oversized hoodies, my 3 work uniforms. I started to unpack, but the silence began to crawl under my skin. It was heavy, thick. Back home there was always noise. The TV blaring the news, the neighbors fighting, the sirens. My dad humming while he cooked. Here the silence rang in my ears like tinnitus. I needed sound. I needed something to prove I was alive. I started to hum, just a low, quiet tune. Amazing Grace. My dad used to sing it when the bills piled up. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. I folded a t-shirt. I got a little louder. That saved a wretch like me. The door to my room slammed open. It hit the wall with a crack like a gunshot. I jumped, dropping the shirt. Lee stood in the doorway. He had removed his suit jacket. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His face was a mask of cold fury. Stop, he said. I was just humming, I stammered. There is no noise in this house, Lee said. He walked into the room. He didn't shout, but his voice sucked the air out of the space. I require absolute focus. Noise is a distraction. Noise is for the weak who cannot stand their own thoughts. It's just a song, I said, feeling a flare of defiance. It's too quiet in here. It feels dead. It is disciplined, he corrected. He loomed over me. You are not in a diner anymore. You are not in the slums. You are in the house of the Gumriang heir. You will learn to be silent. He stared at me until I looked away. Until I nodded. Good, he whispered. Dinner is at 7. Do not be late. He turned and left. The silence rushed back in, colder than before. At 7:00 p.m. sharp, I walked into the dining room. It was a cavernous space dominated by a long table made of black obsidian. A crystal chandelier hung above it, looking like a frozen explosion of ice. An older woman stood by the sideboard. She wore a severe black uniform. Her hair was pulled back so tight it pulled at her eyes. This was the head housekeeper. She had introduced herself earlier only as Mrs. Pack. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She looked at me with open disdain. I looked at the table. There was only one place setting. At the head of the table, a single placemat, a single wine glass, and a single set of silver chopsticks were arranged with geometric precision. "Excuse me," I said. "Where should I sit?" Mrs. Pock pointed a bony finger toward a swinging door at the back of the room. "Kitchen," she said. Her English was clipped. "Staff eat in kitchen." I froze. "But I'm his wife." Mrs. Pock let out a sharp, derisive huff. "Contract," she muttered. "Not wife. You eat with staff." My face burned. I looked at the long, empty table. Then I looked at the kitchen door. I wasn't royalty, but I wasn't a dog to be fed in the back room either. "No," I said. "Move," Mrs. Pack ordered. She stepped forward, trying to herd me away. I said no. "Is there a problem?" Lee's voice cut through the room. He walked in from the hallway. He had changed into a fresh shirt. He looked immaculate. Mrs. Pack immediately bowed deep, her forehead almost touching her knees. "Master Lee." "The girl is confused. I was showing her to her station." Lee stopped. He looked at the table. He saw the single place setting at the head. He didn't speak. He walked to the table. He picked up the wine glass. He inspected it in the light. Then he dropped it. It shattered on the obsidian table. The sound was bright and violent. Mrs. Pack flinched. "Master? Who set this table?" Lee asked softly. "I did, Master. You thought, Lee interrupted. He looked at her. "You thought you could decide the hierarchy of my house?" She is not of our world," Mrs. Pack stammered, casting a hateful look at me. "It is improper. She is my wife," Lee said. "On paper, and in this room. If you disrespect her, you disrespect my signature. And if you disrespect my signature, you are useless to me." He pointed to the door. "Get out. Master, please. I have served the Gumriang family for 30 years. Get out." Lee roared. The sudden volume made both of us jump. "You are fired. Leave the premises within the hour. If you are still here when I finish my meal, security will remove you." Mrs. Pack turned pale. She bowed frantically, then scrambled out of the room, her shoes clicking rapidly on the floor. Lee looked at the other staff members hovering in the shadows. They were terrified. "Reset the table," Lee commanded. 2 settings. One at the head. One at my right hand. The staff surged forward. In seconds, a second place setting appeared. Lee pulled out the chair at his right. He looked at me. "Sit." I walked over, my legs shaking. I sat down. "You didn't have to fire her," I whispered as the staff poured water into my glass. She was loyal to your family." "Exactly," Lee said. He picked up his chopsticks. "That is why she had to go." He looked me in the eye. "She eats where I eat," he said. It wasn't an invitation. It was a law. Eat. Dinner was silent. The only sound was the clink of silver against porcelain. After the meal, Lee vanished into his study. I wandered the penthouse, feeling like a ghost haunting a museum. Around midnight, I got thirsty. I crept out of my room, trying to keep my footsteps light on the marble. I had to pass Lee's bedroom to get to the kitchen. The door was ajar. Just a crack. A sliver of warm yellow light spilled out into the dark hallway. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Lee was standing in the middle of the room. He was facing away from the door. He had just taken off his shirt. His back was a landscape of muscle and tension. But that wasn't what stopped my breath. It was the scar. I knew about the Yakuza. I knew about the Gumriang Syndicate. I knew they tattooed their members with full back pieces. Dragons. Tigers. Symbols of loyalty and heritage. Lee had a tattoo. I could see the edges of it near his ribs. Black ink, intricate scales, the claw of a dragon. But the center of his back was destroyed. From his shoulder blades down to his lower spine, the skin was a mess of shiny, rippled burn tissue. It was pink and white, angry and gnarled. Someone had taken a torch, or an iron, and deliberately burned the dragon off his back. They had erased the family crest with fire. He moved, reaching for a pajama shirt, and the light caught the texture of the burns. It looked agonizing. It looked old. I stepped back, my heart hammering. He wasn't just the heir. He was a defector. He didn't just hate his family's traditions. He had tried to burn them out of his own flesh. I backed away into the shadows, the silence of the penthouse suddenly feeling less like a tomb, and more like a cage he had built to keep the world out. He wasn't just a monster. He was a man in pain, and now I was locked in with him. The box on the bed was made of black velvet. It was long, heavy, and looked more like a coffin for a rifle than a garment bag. "Put it on," Lee said. He was standing by the window adjusting his cufflinks. He didn't turn around. He was already in his tuxedo, looking like a blade sheathed in silk. I opened the box. Inside, the fabric shimmered. It was black silk, embroidered with gold thread that caught the dim light of the bedroom. It was a hanbok, but it wasn't traditional. It was modernized, sleek, and dangerous. The skirt was cut to flow like liquid shadow. The jacket was cropped, tailored to fit like a second skin. "A hanbok?" I asked, running my fingers over the gold embroidery. "You want me to wear this?" "I don't want you to wear it," Lee said, finally turning to face me. "I want you to wield it." He walked over. He took the jacket from my hands. His movements were precise. "Tonight is the Elders' Gala," he said. "Every man in that room will be waiting for you to fail. They expect you to be loud. They expect you to be clumsy. They expect you to be a mistake." He held the jacket open. "This is not a dress, Amara. It is armor. It is a declaration of war. You wear their history better than their daughters do. It is the ultimate insult." I slipped my arms into the silk. It was cool against my skin. Lee stepped behind me to tie the ribbon, the Otgorium. His fingers brushed my chest. I held my breath. He tied the knot with a sharp, violent tug that pulled me back against him. "Listen to me," he whispered into my ear. "Do not lower your eyes. Do not apologize. Do not shrink. Tonight, you are not Amara Brown the waitress. You are Mrs. Lee. If you show fear, they will eat you alive." He spun me around. He looked at me. For a second, the cold mask slipped. His eyes darkened. He looked hungry. "Let's go," he said. The ballroom was a sea of diamonds and hostility. When we walked in, the music didn't stop, but the conversation did. It died instantly. 300 heads turned. I felt the weight of their stares physically. It was a wall of judgment. I saw the whispers behind hands. I saw the sneers from the older women in their pastel gowns. I saw the predatory looks from the men. I was a drop of black ink in a glass of milk. Lee didn't slow down. He placed his hand on the small of my back. It wasn't a comforting touch. It was a steering mechanism. He pushed me forward, forcing me to cut through the crowd with him. "Head up," he murmured. "Breathe." We made it to the center of the room before the shark circled. "Jongnam." The voice was boisterous, slurred, and loud. "Chairman back." He was a short, thick man with a face flushed red from expensive cognac. He pushed through the crowd, flanked by 2 nervous assistants. Bayek was Lee's rival. He had been trying to hostile take over Gumriang for years. Lee stopped. His hand on my back turned into a grip of steel. "Chairman Bayek," Lee said. His voice was ice. Bayek didn't look at Lee. He looked at me. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my chest. Then my hips. He licked his lips. It was disgusting. Well, Bayek laughed. He swirled his drink. "So the rumors are true. You really did bring a stray dog into the house." The people nearby gasped softly. Lee's body went rigid. I felt the violence radiating off him. He was 1 second away from snapping Bayek's neck in front of 300 witnesses. "She is exotic. Jongnam." Bayek continued, stepping closer. He reached out as if to touch the silk of my sleeve. "How much did you pay for her?" "I have a bachelor party next weekend. I want one." Lee's fist clenched. The knuckles turned white. He inhaled sharply, preparing to strike. But I moved first. I slapped Bayek's hand away. The sound of flesh on flesh echoed in the sudden silence. Bayek froze. His eyes bulged. He looked at me, stunned that the furniture had just fought back. I stepped forward. I didn't look at Lee. I looked straight into Bayek's watery, bloodshot eyes. The price is not the issue, Chairman, I said. I didn't speak in English. I spoke in Korean. Formal, crisp, perfect. The words rolled off my tongue with the precise diction I had practiced for years listening to the dramas my father watched, and the conversational flow I had picked up from the Korean grandmothers who played cards at the diner during the slow shifts. They had taught me the insults first. Jeonun panmayongi animnida, I said smoothly. I am not for sale. The entire ballroom seemed to inhale at once. Bak's jaw dropped. I smiled. It was a sweet, poisonous smile. But I hear your company's stock price hit a record low this morning, I continued, still in flawless Korean. Perhaps you should worry less about buying women and more about who is buying your empire. The silence that followed was absolute. It was deafening. Bayek turned a shade of purple I didn't know existed. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He had been stripped naked in front of his peers by the very person he tried to dehumanize. I felt Lee's hand on my back relax. Then, the fingers spread. He wasn't steering me anymore. He was claiming me. We are leaving, Lee announced. He didn't look at Bayek. He looked at the room. My wife is tired of the noise. He turned me around. We walked out. This time, nobody whispered. They just watched. And they looked afraid. The valet brought the Maybach around. We got in. As soon as the doors closed, the adrenaline crashed. My knees gave out. I slumped against the leather seat, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I couldn't breathe. I had just insulted one of the most powerful men in Seoul. I think I'm going to be sick, I whispered, pressing my forehead against the cool glass of the window. Look at me. Lee's voice was low, rough. I turned. He wasn't sitting on his side of the car. He had slid across the bench. He was inches from me. His eyes were blazing. He reached out and grabbed my chin. His fingers were hot. He tilted my face up, forcing me to meet his gaze. You speak Korean, he said. It wasn't a question. I picked it up, I managed to say. At the diner. The old ladies. They liked me. Lee laughed. It was a short, dark sound. He looked at me like he had never seen me before, like I was a new weapon he had just discovered in his arsenal. You destroyed him, Lee said. His thumb brushed over my lower lip. Bake. You didn't just insult him, you emasculated him. In his own language. The air in the car shifted. The fear evaporated, replaced by something thick and electric. The space between us felt charged. Lee moved closer. His leg pressed against mine. The friction sent a jolt of heat through the silk of my dress. I thought I bought a victim, Lee whispered. His eyes dropped to my mouth, then back to my eyes. I thought I bought a prop to annoy my grandfather. His hand slid from my chin down to my throat. His grip was firm, possessive. He could snap my neck, or he could kiss me. I didn't know which one I wanted. I was wrong, he murmured. He leaned in. His breath ghosted against my lips. He smelled of expensive scotch and violence. You are not a victim, Amara. You are a natural. He pulled back, just an inch, denying us the contact. The torture was deliberate. He sat back against the seat, but he kept his hand on my neck. His thumb stroked my pulse point, feeling the frantic rhythm of my heart. He smiled, a real dangerous smile. You looked dangerous tonight, Amara. Do it again. I was actually starting to like the silence. It had been 7 days. 7 days since the contract. 7 days since the gala. I sat on the white leather sofa, my legs tucked under me. I was wearing silk pajamas that cost more than my car. A cup of jasmine tea steamed on the table. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of Seoul blinked like millions of indifferent stars. It was peaceful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for a bill collector to call. I wasn't waiting for a landlord to knock. I wasn't waiting for King to throw a bottle. I felt safe. Then, the phone buzzed. It wasn't my old phone. Lee had thrown that in the trash the night I moved in. This was the encrypted device he had given me, a sleek black slab of glass that was supposed to be untraceable. It was only for emergencies. It was only for him. It sat on the marble coffee table, vibrating. Zzz, zzz. I frowned. Lee was in the west wing of the penthouse. Why was he texting me? I picked it up. Unknown number. My stomach tightened. A cold drop of dread landed in my gut. I slid my thumb across the screen. A video file. I pressed play. The sound hit me first. The roar of wind. The crackle of dry wood snapping under extreme heat. Then, the image resolved. I dropped the teacup. It shattered on the floor, splashing hot liquid over my bare feet. But I didn't feel it. On the screen, my childhood home was burning. It wasn't just a small fire. The entire structure was engulfed. Orange flames licked up the siding, devouring the porch where my father used to smoke his pipe. The roof had already collapsed. The windows were blown out, vomiting black smoke into the night sky. The camera panned down. A man stepped into the frame. King Davis. But he didn't look like the man Lee had broken in the diner. He wasn't dirty. He wasn't stumbling. He was wearing a suit. It was cheap, ill-fitting, but new. He had a cast on his right hand, clean white plaster. In his left hand, he held a new heavy pistol. He looked into the camera. His eyes were clear, sober, malicious. "Hey, baby," King said. He smiled. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Your husband has a heavy hand, but he's sloppy." King raised the gun. He pointed it at the burning house. He thought he could pay me off? Scare me off? King laughed. My new friends gave me a second chance. They gave me a new purpose. He leaned closer to the lens. "I know where the old man is, Amara. St. Mary's Hospital. Room 402. Vascular unit." My heart stopped. "Daddy takes the fall," King whispered. The video cut to black. I couldn't breathe. The air in the penthouse vanished. He knew the room number. He was going there. Right now. "No," I gasped. "No, no, no." I scrambled off the couch. I slipped on the spilled tea, my knee hitting the marble hard. I didn't care. I scrambled up, running on pure adrenaline. I didn't have shoes. I didn't have a coat. I just had the phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. I sprinted toward the foyer. The elevator was the only way out. I had to get to the hospital. I had to beat him there. I rounded the corner into the hallway. Lee stepped out of his office. He was wearing a black turtleneck and reading glasses. He looked calm. Domestic. He looked up as I came barreling down the hall. "Amara? Move." I screamed. I didn't slow down. Get out of my way. I tried to run past him to the elevator bank. Lee moved. He didn't run. He just shifted his weight, stepping directly into my path. I slammed into his chest. It was like running into a concrete pillar. The impact knocked the wind out of me. "Where are you going?" Lee asked. His voice was steady, too steady. "He's alive." I shrieked. I hammered my fists against his chest. "You lied to me. You said you handled him. You said he was gone." Lee caught my wrists. He didn't squeeze. He just held them. "Who is alive? Explain." "King." I ripped my hands away, or I tried to. Lee's grip was iron. He burned the house. He's going to the hospital. He knows the room number. I kicked him. I was barefoot, so it hurt me more than him. But I didn't care. I kicked his shins. I clawed at his shirt. "Let me go. I have to save him. He's going to kill my dad." "Amara, stop. I hate you." I screamed, the tears finally bursting out, hot and blinding. "You promised. You bought me, and you promised." I threw my entire body weight against him, trying to shove him toward the wall. He didn't budge an inch. Instead, he moved in. He stepped into my space, collapsing the distance. He wrapped his arms around my waist. "No," I wailed. He lifted me. He picked me up off the floor completely. My feet dangled in the air. I thrashed, kicking at the empty space, twisting my body. I was fighting for my father's life. But Lee was immovable. He was a statue of muscle and control. He clamped my arms to my sides, pinning me against him so I couldn't hurt myself or him. "System," Lee said. His voice was a low growl against my ear. "Lockdown. Code red." Click. 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 The sound of heavy bolts sliding home echoed through the penthouse. The elevator lights died. The steel shutters on the windows began to descend. "No." I sobbed, my fight draining away as the realization hit me. I was trapped. "Please. Please let me go. He's going to kill him." Lee turned and carried me back into the living room. He walked as if I weighed nothing. He sat down on the sofa, keeping me pinned on his lap. "Breathe," he ordered. "If you pass out, you cannot help your father." "You don't understand," I choked out, my face buried in his sweater. He sent a video. Lee went still. "Show me." He loosened his grip just enough for me to move my arm. I brought the phone up. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I played the video. The fire roared. King spoke. The threat was delivered. Lee watched it. He didn't flinch at the fire. He didn't react to the gun. He watched with the cold, analytical intensity of a surgeon looking at a tumor. He watched it twice. On the second viewing, he paused the video. He zoomed in on King's jacket. There, on the lapel of the cheap suit, was a small enamel pin. It was gold. A serpent coiled around a sword. The crest of the Bukyu clan. Chairman Bayek's private enforcers. Lee's face changed. The domestic calm vanished. The mask of the businessman evaporated. Beneath it, something ancient and terrifying woke up. His eyes went dead. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "He has backing," Lee said softly. "He's going to the hospital," I whispered, grabbing Lee's shirt. "We have to call the police." "The police are on Bayek's payroll," Lee said. "If we call them, they will delay the response just long enough for King to finish the job. Then what do we do?" I cried. "We can't just sit here." Lee set the phone down on the table. He stood up, lifting me and setting me on the cushion. He walked to the wall panel. He pressed a button. "Security Detail Alpha." Lee spoke into the intercom. "Target is St. Mary's Hospital. Room 402. Hostiles inbound. Lethal force authorized. Secure the patient. Move him to the safe house. Execution immediate. Copy, boss." A voice crackled back. "We are 2 minutes out." Lee turned back to me. I was shivering. The shock was setting in. You missed him," I said accusingly. "You said you handled it." Lee walked over to the window. The steel shutters were half closed, slicing the view of the city into bars. He looked out at the darkness. He didn't make excuses. He didn't apologize. "I didn't lie, Amara," he said. His voice was heavy, vibrating with a dark, suppressed rage. "I made a mistake. I treated a predator like a pest. I showed mercy." He turned to face me. His eyes were black holes. "I left a rat alive," Lee said, "and now I have to burn the whole city to kill it." The doors to the east wing were black oak. They stood 12 feet tall, sealed shut, looking less like a doorway and more like the gates to a fortress. I paced in front of them. My bare feet slapped against the marble floor. 10 steps left. Turn. 10 steps right. Turn. Lee was behind those doors. He was in his war room, coordinating a strike team to save my father. He had told me to wait. He had told me to trust him. But trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. My phone buzzed again. It sat on the coffee table where I had left it, vibrating against the glass like a trapped insect. I lunged for it. Incoming video call. Unknown. My thumb hit the green button before I could think. The screen flickered. Static hissed, loud and sharp. Then the image resolved. It was tight on a face. "Daddy?" I whispered. My father looked terrible. His skin was gray, covered in a sheen of cold sweat. His eyes were wide, darting frantically around the room. A piece of duct tape was plastered across his mouth, but it was peeling at the corner. He was making a sound. A high, thin whine of pure terror. The camera pulled back. A hand entered the frame. It was holding a knife. A jagged, rusted hunting knife. The blade pressed against the bandages on my father's leg. The leg that was supposed to be healing. The tape on his mouth was ripped off. "Amara." He screamed. His voice was a wreck. "They're hurting me. Please, baby, don't let them." The camera jerked away from him. It spun around to face King. He was smiling. His eyes were bright with a manic chemical energy. "Tick-tock, wifey," King whispered. The microphone caught the wet sound of his breath. "Your husband's men are fast. But I'm faster." He held up a wrist. He tapped a cheap digital watch. 20 minutes. "If you aren't in this room in 20 minutes, I cut his throat. Then I cut his leg off just for fun." "No." I screamed at the phone. "I'm coming. Don't touch him. Come alone," King said. "If I see one suit, if I see one black car, Daddy dies." The screen went black. Panic didn't just hit me, it dissolved me. My blood turned to ice water. 20 minutes. St. Mary's was 15 minutes away in light traffic. I turned and ran toward the east wing doors. I slammed my fist against the wood. "Lee," I shrieked. "Lee, open the door. He has him." The heavy oak didn't budge. A security guard stepped out of the shadows. He was a giant, wearing the same dark suit as the others. He moved in front of the door, blocking my path. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was a flat monotone. "Master Lee is in a secure briefing. No interruptions. Protocol Alpha." "Protocol?" I stared at him, wild-eyed. "My father is going to die. I need to show him this video. Get out of my way." I tried to push past him. It was like shoving a brick wall. He didn't even sway. He just looked down at me with empty professional eyes. "Step back, ma'am. You are to remain in the secure zone. You don't understand." I clawed at his sleeve. He gave me 20 minutes. "The strike team is en route," the guard said robotically. "The situation is handled." "It's not handled." I screamed. "King knows. He knows they're coming." The guard didn't blink. He wasn't going to move. He wasn't going to open the door. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 19 minutes. If I waited for Lee to finish his briefing, my father would be dead. If I tried to argue with the guard, my father would be dead. I had to move. I backed away. "Fine," I spat. "Fine." I turned and ran. Not toward the front door, the elevator was locked down. I ran toward the kitchen. I burst through the swinging doors. The stainless steel appliances gleamed under the harsh lights. The kitchen was empty. In the far corner, next to the pantry, was the service elevator. The one the staff used. The one Mrs. Pock had used to bring in groceries. I ran to the keypad. My fingers hovered over the numbers. I closed my eyes, searching the chaos of my memory. I remembered the day she was fired. I remembered seeing her punch in the code, her angry fingers stabbing the buttons. 1, 9, 8, 8, please work. I punched it in. Beep. The light turned green. The brushed metal doors slid open. I threw myself inside. The elevator smelled of bleach and garbage. I hit the button for the garage. The descent was agonizing. Every floor that ticked by on the display felt like a minute lost. 50, 40, 30. When the doors opened at the garage level, I didn't look for a car. I couldn't drive Lee's cars. They required biometric access. I ran for the service exit. I burst out into the alleyway behind the building. The night air hit me like a physical blow. It was raining again. The pavement was slick and black. I ran to the main street. I waved my arms like a lunatic. A yellow taxi swerved toward the curb, tires hissing on the wet asphalt. I ripped the door open and dove in. "St. Mary's Hospital," I gasped, slamming the door. "Go. I'll give you everything I have. Just drive." The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror, barefoot, wearing silk pajamas, soaking wet. He didn't ask questions. He stomped on the gas. The city blurred. Street lights became streaks of neon. Red lights were suggestions. I stared at my phone, watching the minutes bleed away. 12 minutes. We were stuck in traffic on the bridge. 8 minutes. We cleared the congestion. 5 minutes. The hospital came into view. "Here," I yelled. "Stop here." I threw the secure phone onto the seat. It was worth $1,000, more than enough for the fare. I didn't care. I scrambled out of the car before it fully stopped. I hit the sidewalk running. The concrete tore at the soles of my feet, but the pain was distant. I sprinted toward the emergency room entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a wheeze. I braced myself for the noise, the chaos of an ER, the crying babies, the shouting nurses, the beeping monitors. Silence greeted me. The waiting room was empty. The triage desk was unmanned. A single computer monitor hummed, casting a blue glow over an empty chair. It felt wrong. It felt dead. But I didn't stop to analyze it. Room 402. 4th floor. I ran past the empty desk. I found the stairwell and took the steps 2 at a time. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. 4th floor. Vascular unit. I burst through the stairwell door. The hallway was long and dim. The lights flickered overhead. Buzz, click, buzz. "Dad?" I called out. My voice echoed, hollow and lonely. No answer. No nurses. No doctors. Where was the security detail? Where were the patients? I saw the number. 402. The door was closed. I stopped in front of it. I pressed my ear to the wood. I heard nothing. No crying. No struggle. I grabbed the handle. It was cold. I threw the door open. "Dad." I stumbled into the room, ready to fight, ready to beg. The room was empty. The bed was stripped bare. No sheets. No pillows. No patient. The monitors were dark. The IV pole was a skeleton in the corner. There was no blood. There was no sign of a struggle. In the center of the room, facing the door, sat a single metal folding chair. I froze. My brain tried to process the image. He's not here. He was never here. The video. The background wall in the video was blue. These walls are green. It was a set. A trick. A sound behind me. Click. The door I had just rushed through closed. The lock engaged with a heavy metallic thud. I spun around. King Davis was standing there, leaning against the doorframe. He wasn't wearing the cheap suit from the video. He was wearing scrubs, a doctor's coat. A stethoscope hung around his neck like a trophy. He wasn't holding a knife. He was holding a syringe. The liquid inside was clear. He smiled. It wasn't the manic smile from the video. It was calm, predatory, satisfied. "You made it," King said softly. "I told them you would come. They said you were too smart." I said no, she loves her daddy too much. "Where is he?" I whispered, backing away until my legs hit the metal bed frame. "Where is my father?" "Safe," King said, stepping forward. "For now, as long as you behave." He uncapped the syringe. A tiny bead of liquid welled at the tip of the needle. "You?" I choked out. "You don't have the brains for this." "Who helped you? Does it matter?" King asked. He lunged. I tried to scream, but he was fast. He closed the distance in a single stride. His hand clamped over my mouth, smelling of latex and bitter soap. He slammed me back against the wall. I felt the sharp pinch of the needle in my neck. Cold fire flooded my veins. "Good girl," King whispered into my ear as my knees gave out. The room began to tilt. The green walls turned gray. The floor rushed up to meet me. Now King's voice floated from far away. "The real game begins." Darkness swallowed me whole. The headache was a physical thing. It sat behind my eyes, pulsing with a heavy metallic rhythm. I blinked. My eyelids felt like sandpaper. The first thing I saw was gold. Too much gold. Gold wallpaper with a damask pattern that made my eyes cross. Gold trim on the ceiling. Gold statues of lions that looked like they were made of plastic and spray-painted. I tried to move my hands. I couldn't. My wrists were pulled behind the back of a heavy wooden chair. The plastic bite of a zip tie dug into my skin. My ankles were bound to the chair legs. I wasn't in a hospital. I wasn't in a cell. I was in a penthouse that was trying very hard to look like a palace, but only succeeded in looking like a desperate plea for validation. It smelled of stale cigar smoke and heavy cloying cologne. "She wakes," a voice boomed. I turned my head. The motion made the room spin. Chairman Baik sat on a velvet sofa across from me. He was holding a glass of amber liquid. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo now. He was wearing a silk robe that gaped open at his chest. He looked soft, doughy. Standing by the window was King. He looked out of place. His scrubs were dirty. He was holding his gun, but he kept shifting his weight from foot to foot. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the door. "Welcome to my home, Mrs. Lee." Baik sneered. He took a sip of his drink. "It is much nicer than that cold tomb your husband lives in, don't you think? More warmth." "Where is my father?" I croaked. My throat was dry as dust. "He is safe," Baik said, waving a dismissive hand. "For the moment. That depends entirely on you." He picked up a phone from the table. He pointed the camera lens at me. "We are going to make a movie," Baik said. He smiled, showing yellowed teeth. You are going to look into this lens. You are going to cry. You are going to beg Lee Jongnam to give up his seat on the board to save your life. You are going to tell the world that the great Gumriang heir cannot protect his own wife. I looked at the phone. Then I looked at Baik. A week ago, I would have cried. A week ago, I would have begged. But I had spent a week in the silence of Lee's world. I had seen the scars on his back. I had worn his armor. I didn't feel like crying. I felt cold, calculated. I straightened my spine against the chair. I didn't look at the camera. I looked past Baik. King, I said. King flinched. He looked over at me, his eyes wide and nervous. Shut up, King muttered. Do what the man says. You're smarter than him, I said. My voice was steady. You know who Lee is. You saw what he did to your hand. You saw what he did to your house. I said shut up. King stepped forward, raising the gun. Do you really think he let me walk out of that penthouse without insurance? I asked. I locked eyes with him. I put every ounce of conviction I had into the lie. King froze. What? A subdermal tracker, I lied smoothly. Implanted in my left arm the night I signed the contract. It monitors my heart rate. It monitors my location to within 3 meters. I saw the doubt creep into King's eyes. He glanced at my arm. There was nothing there but skin, but fear is a powerful hallucinogen. He knew I was here 10 minutes ago, I continued. He isn't gathering a ransom, King. He isn't calling a lawyer. I leaned forward as far as the bonds would allow. He is coming to exterminate. King went pale. He spun around and ran to the window. He yanked the curtain back, peering down at the street. Is there a car? King demanded. Is there a black car? Stop it. Bayek roared. He slammed his drink down. She is lying. She is a waitress, you idiot. She doesn't have a tracker. You don't know him. King shouted back. He was sweating now. You sit in your office all day. You didn't see him break my fingers like they were twigs. If he's coming, he is not coming. Bayek yelled. He stood up, his face flushing purple. This building is a fortress. I have security in the lobby. I have men on the elevator. Your security is bought, I said softly. Lee pays double. Shut your mouth. Bok screamed at me. Check the hall, King said to Bok. He was panicking. Check the cameras, I am the chairman. Bok bellowed. I do not check cameras. I give orders. Get over here and hit her. Make her cry. I'm not touching her, King said, backing away toward the door. If she has a tracker, the signal is already out. We need to move. We need to leave. Coward. Bok threw his glass. It shattered against the wall near King's head. They were screaming at each other. The soft, arrogant man and the hard, terrified rat. They had forgotten about me. I looked around the room. I needed a weapon. I had nothing. My hands were useless. My legs were tied. Then, I saw it. To my right, on a low marble side table, sat a massive candelabra. It was gold, ugly and heavy. 3 thick wax candles were burning in it, casting flickering shadows on the wall. Right next to the table hung the curtains. They weren't silk. They were heavy, crushed velvet. Cheap synthetic fabric. The kind that didn't just burn, it melted. The table was 3 feet away. Baik was screaming at King. I will have you killed if you walk out that door. I'm not dying for your vendetta. King shouted back. Now. I took a deep breath. I dug my bare toes into the carpet. I threw my weight to the right. I didn't try to stand. I threw my entire upper body, using the heavy wooden chair as a battering ram. I tipped over. Gravity took me. I fell sideways. It felt like it took a year. Crash. I hit the floor hard. The wood of the chair slammed into my shoulder, jarring my teeth. But the back of the chair hit the table. The marble table wobbled. The heavy gold candelabra slid. It tipped over. It fell directly into the folds of the velvet drapes. The flame met the fabric. It was instantaneous. The synthetic velvet didn't smolder. It whooshed. A sheet of orange fire raced up the curtain like a living thing. Black smoke, thick and oily, billowed out immediately. What the? King spun around. Fire. Baik shrieked. My drapes. My Italian drapes. The fire jumped. It caught the tassels. It caught the carpet. The heat was sudden and intense. The sprinklers, King yelled. Why aren't they going off? I disconnected them in this room. Baik stammered, coughing as the black smoke rolled across the ceiling. The water damage risk to the art. You idiot. King screamed. The fire was roaring now. It was consuming the wall. The smoke was dropping, a suffocating black blanket. I lay on the floor, my cheek pressed against the carpet. The air down here was still breathable, but it was getting hot. Help me. Baik coughed, dropping to his knees. Untie her. We need her, forget her. King yelled. He opened the door. I'm out. Come back. Baik wheezed. The room was turning into an oven. The gold paint on the ceiling began to blister and peel. The plastic lions started to melt, their faces drooping into grotesque masks. I watched the flames climb. They were terrifying. They were destructive. But they were also a signal. Lee wouldn't need a tracker. He wouldn't need a phone call. He would see the smoke rising from the penthouse of his enemy. I coughed. The acrid taste of burning plastic filling my mouth. My shoulder throbbed. My wrists bled. But I didn't close my eyes. I watched the fire eat the tacky palace. I didn't wait for a savior. I lit a beacon. The heat was a physical weight. It pressed down on my chest, heavier than the smoke, heavier than the fear. The penthouse was a furnace. The velvet curtains had turned into pillars of black flame. The synthetic carpet was melting into a sticky, toxic tar. The fire alarm screamed overhead, a relentless, piercing shriek that vibrated in my teeth. Move. King screamed. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at Chairman Baek, who was on his hands and knees clutching a melting gold statue to his chest and weeping. King was running. He scrambled over the back of the sofa, kicking a vase onto the floor. He sprinted toward the foyer, toward the elevator, toward the only way out. I lay on the floor, still bound to the overturned chair. The smoke was thickest near the ceiling, so I could still breathe down here, but the air tasted like copper and burnt hair. I watched King run. I watched the rat try to leave the sinking ship. King hit the elevator call button. He slammed his fist against it. Again. Again. Come on. He shrieked. Come on, you piece of junk. The fire roared behind him. The paint on the walls bubbled and popped. Ding. The sound was absurdly cheerful. A polite, mechanical chime cutting through the chaos of the inferno. The brushed steel doors slid open. King exhaled a sob of relief. He surged forward. Then, he stopped. He skidded to a halt, his sneakers squeaking on the marble. The elevator wasn't empty. Lee Jongnam stood in the center of the car. He was alone. He wore a black trench coat over his suit. His hands hung loosely at his sides. In his right hand, a matte black pistol pointed at the floor. He didn't look like he had run up the stairs. He didn't look like he was sweating. He looked like he was waiting for a meeting to start. Smoke drifted into the elevator, curling around his legs. He didn't blink. King made a noise, a strangled, high-pitched whimper. Lee took one step forward. King scrambled back. He tripped over his own feet, falling onto the foyer floor, then crab-walking backward, away from the elevator. Away from the monster in the coat. No, King gasped. No, stay back. Lee stepped out of the elevator. The doors tried to close behind him, bouncing off his shoulder before retracting. He walked into the burning apartment. King scrambled to his feet. He looked at the fire. Then he looked at Lee. He realized with terrifying clarity that the fire was the safer option. He ran back into the living room. He saw me. You. King roared. He lunged. He grabbed the back of my chair and hauled it upright. The sudden motion wrenched my shoulder, sending a spike of agony down my arm. I cried out. King grabbed a handful of my hair. He yanked my head back. He pressed the barrel of his gun against my temple. The metal was hot. Stop. King screamed at the smoke-filled doorway. One step closer and I paint the walls with her. Lee emerged from the smoke. He stopped. He was 10 feet away. The flames from the curtains illuminated his face. It was a mask of absolute frozen rage. He looked at the gun against my head. His eyes narrowed. He lowered his weapon. Just an inch. King laughed. It was a manic, hysterical sound. That's right. That's right, big man. Drop it. Drop the gun or she dies. Lee didn't drop the gun. He looked at me. His eyes locked onto mine. In the middle of the fire, in the middle of the noise, The world narrowed down to that connection. He wasn't looking at me with pity. He was looking at me with expectation. He was waiting. He needed a clear shot. I gritted my teeth. The heat was blistering my skin. The gun was digging into my skull. But I wasn't a victim. Not anymore. I was the woman who had burned this palace down. I didn't pull away. I leaned back. I threw my head backward with every ounce of strength I had left in my body. Crack. My skull collided with King's nose. It was a sickening, wet crunch. King howled. His grip loosened. His head snapped back. The gun wavered, pulling away from my temple for a fraction of a second. That was all Lee needed. He didn't hesitate. He didn't speak. He simply raised his right arm. Phut. The sound was quiet, suppressed. It was swallowed by the roar of the fire. King's head snapped back again. A small, dark hole appeared in the center of his forehead. His eyes went wide. The scream died in his throat. He collapsed. He didn't slump. He dropped like a marionette whose strings had been cut. He hit the floor with a heavy thud. The gun skittered across the carpet. Dead. Lee stepped over the body. He didn't look down. He holstered his weapon in one fluid motion. He knelt in front of me. From his pocket, he produced a switchblade. Click. The blade flashed in the firelight. He reached behind me. One slash. The zip ties on my wrists snapped. Another slash. My ankles were free. I fell forward. He caught me. His arms went around me, solid and real. He pulled me against his chest. He smelled of rain and gunpowder. Amara, he whispered against my hair. His voice was rough, shaking. I buried my face in his coat. I knew you would come. Jongnam. A pathetic wail came from the floor. Lee stiffened. He pulled back, keeping one arm around my waist to support me. He turned his head. Chairman Bayek was crawling toward us. He was coughing, his face streaked with soot and tears. He was dragging a heavy gold bust of himself. Help me, Bayek wheezed. He grabbed the hem of Lee's coat. The elevator. Take me to the elevator. We are family, Jongnam. You cannot leave me here. The ceiling groaned. A chunk of plaster crashed down on the other side of the room, sending a shower of sparks into the air. The heat was becoming unbearable. Lee looked down at the old man. He looked at the hand clutching his coat. He kicked Bayek's hand away. Family, Lee repeated. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. Please, Bayek begged. I will give you the shares. I will give you the territory. Just save me. Lee looked around the room. He looked at the melting statues, the burning drapes, the tacky gold-plated tomb Bayek had built for himself. You wanted to buy my wife, Lee said. His voice was cold enough to freeze the flames. You wanted to own things. He looked Bayek in the eye. You love your gold, Chairman? Lee stepped back, pulling me with him toward the foyer. Burn with it. No. No. Bayek screamed, trying to crawl after us. But the carpet in front of him caught fire, creating a wall of heat he couldn't cross. Lee didn't look back. He swept me up into his arms. He carried me bridal style, shielding my face from the smoke with his shoulder. He walked out of the apartment. He stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut, sealing the screams and the fire away. The silence of the elevator was instant and shocking. The hum of the motor was the only sound. I looked up at him. His face was streaked with ash. There was blood on his collar, my blood from my split lip. My father, I whispered. Is he? Secured, Lee said. He looked down at me. The rage in his eyes was gone, replaced by a dark, consuming intensity. My men have him. He is safe. I let out a breath I had been holding for an hour. My head fell back against his shoulder. You started the fire, Lee said softly. I had to, I murmured, my eyes closing. I had to make sure you saw me. Lee tightened his grip on me. I see you, Amara, he whispered. I see nothing else. The elevator dinged, ground floor. The doors opened to the rainy night, and he carried me out into the cold, clean air. 3 months later, the winter frost had finally melted from the garden. I watched from the balcony as my father walked the stone